years, it was estimated at 12.6% in 24-25, up from 11.1% in 2020-21. Among individuals aged 15 to 29, the rate rose to 11.5% from 10%, reflecting growing joblessness among the youth. Over 800,000 Pakistanis migrate annually for work. 40 to 60% are unskilled, semi-skilled. Only a small percentage are skilled. Key resources of distress, including unemployment, inflation, skill gaps, lack of opportunities for women, corruption and climate-related rural hardships, and psychological stress. The ILO and the World Bank place youth employment around 9 to 10% through underdevelopment. Surveys show youth inclinations towards retail services, hospitality, transportation, construction, and manufacturing jobs. Educated youth in cities increasingly seek IT, freelancing, and digital services. Overseas employment remains a major aspiration. As a state, we must focus on development and let settled issues remain. That is, there should be no more constitutional amendments, no further provinces, no change in the parliamentary system of governance, and the adherence to provincial autonomies. We spend most of our time getting caught up in these rather than looking at the real issues that confront us. The reality that a bulk of the budget is spent on defense expenditure and debt servicing is something that we will need to work around. There is the overall question of corruption and transparency, particularly corruption in development schemes. What are the youth issues? Widening generational gaps, growing isolation, particularly after COVID, and the increasing sense of uncertainty about the future. Statistics show that many young people experience intense pressure at home and in academic situations, a situation described as a pressure cooker environment. Another theme is the lack of inclusion of young people in policy making. Youth voices are rarely considered in decision-making bodies. Restrictive rules in youth parliaments and community space leave many feeling excluded. Gender bases, bureaucratic barriers, and absence of structured youth platforms are reasons why the young Pakistanis feel unheard, disoriented, unaware of Pakistani culture, unaware of our history, and with no education. We need to have a system of education that is progressive, technical, and intertwined with our real history and federally diverse culture. Our youth need a Pakistani face born out of synthesis of its federally diverse culture rather than an Arab or a Western face. The failure of the state to provide Pakistani-oriented educational system drives the youth towards religious and nationalist extremism. They seek refuge in madrasas. They seek to be guided to become suicide bombers and fodder for the terrorists. Solutions for youth development, short-term apprenticeships, demand-driven training, microfinance linked to mentoring women's workforce inclusion. Medium-term, strengthening rural value chain development, digital job matching. Long-term, education reforms, girls' education, governance, and macroeconomic stability. Solutions to reduce public Solutions to reduce population growth. Number one, effective implementation of population policy with the goal to achieve CCI targets of a total fertility rate of 2.2 children per woman and lowering the population growth rate to 1.2% per annum by 2030 would mean 50 million fewer people by 2050. Number two, ensure that Pakistan reaps the opportunity of a demographic dividend. Number three, the challenge is to create 65 million new productive employment opportunities between 2025 to 2050. 2.6 million additional workers will enter the labor market each year between 2025 to 2050. Number three, as a result of past high fertility rates, the proportion of young population has decreased from 43% in 1990 to 37% in 2023. The working age population has risen to 59% in 2023. A lower population growth rate of 1.2% by 2030 can lead to a transformation in the economic outlook. GDP growth rate can be 1.7%, a percentage point higher if the population growth rate declines by 2030. Per capita income can double per annum by 2050 if the population growth rate declines by 2030, and the per capita incomes will rise at 3.4% per year instead of 2.2%. Household savings will go up to 13.4% with lower population growth. Investment rates will be 6.5 percentage points higher if the population growth rate declines by 2030. Number four, invest in human capital. Particularly invest in women. Girls and women in particular face stark educational disadvantages compared to men, with a significant gap in educational attainment across all levels of education. Reducing fertility to 2.1% children per woman and universal school enrollment by 2028 is a way forward to have less populous and a more educated Pakistan. As of 2023, nearly half of the women still have no formal education. Only a small, very select group of women have had the opportunity to attend secondary and higher educational institutions. Number five, lower population growth rate as adaptation and building resilience to climate crisis. And with this, ladies and gentlemen, I'm grateful to you and to Dawn for having given me this opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you. Now we would like to invite Dr. Maliha Lodhi to deliver her keynote address. You can do it right from there.
Okay.
Yeah?
I'll do it from here. Thank you so much.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Let me say that I'm speaking from here because when you walk in to a stage and find, can you hear me all right? Yes? When you walk up on a stage and find that the lectern is taller than you, then that's a sign that you should sit down and not stand. Therefore, let me start by saying I'm extremely grateful to Dawn for organizing this important conference on such an important and consequential issue for our country. I understand the Prime Minister was supposed to come in the morning to deliver his address, and he didn't show up. No surprise. That's how important population is to the Prime Minister and to the government and to successive governments. So it's unfortunate, but I think that says it all in a way. So let me state my case at the very outset. Uncontrolled population growth and lack of government attention to this consequential issue is feeding into and exacerbating Pakistan's crisis in human development. I believe Pakistan is in the throes of this crisis, which has far-reaching consequences for our economic development and for the welfare of our people. So let us first consider what is the nature and magnitude of this crisis of human development. Then turn to how population and the youth bulge plays into this and the future it holds for the country and for Generation Z. And finally, we look at the implications of official neglect of this issue for Pakistan's economic growth and prosperity. The crisis in human development is reflected in the fact that almost all indicators of literacy, education, health, poverty, gender disparity, and other aspects of human welfare have been deteriorating in recent years. The country's growth and development prospects are being severely constrained by the lack of investment in human capital. Yet, policy action to address this doesn't really figure in government priorities. The deficit in human development rarely comes up in parliamentary or public debate. The overall picture of various dimensions of human development remain exceedingly grim. The UNDP's latest Global Human Development Report of this year, 2025, puts Pakistan in the low human development category, ranked at 168 out of 198 countries in the Human Development Index. This marks a 35-year low. In its 2025 report, the World Bank, a report titled Pakistan's Human Capital Review, said that Pakistan faces a silent, deep human capital crisis which will adversely affect its economic future. But let's look at some specific areas of human development. Literacy levels, as you know, are stagnant. Official documents put literacy at 60%. Probably an overestimate, but even so, this means that 40% of our people are still illiterate. No country has achieved economic progress with this level of illiteracy. Economic progress can never be predicated on an illiterate base. Given the population's youth bulge, the education deficit has very troubling implications. 64% of the population are below the age of 30, which means that the young will determine our future and the country's destiny. But if they are uneducated and unemployed, they face a hopeless future, which will jeopardize the country's prospects, obviously. Pakistan still has, as you all probably know, the world's second highest number of children, over 26 million, out of school. Over half of them are girls. And this means 45% of children in this age group of 5 to 10 do not have access to any school. This, of course, violates the obligation set out in our Constitution's Article 25A that enjoins the state to provide free and compulsory education to all children of the age of 5 to 16. What it means is that millions of young people who have had no access to education will be entering the labor market, the job market, with an inherent, intrinsic disadvantage. I know many would have made this point earlier, but to reap the demographic dividend, Pakistan has to educate itself. It has to educate the young. The youth bulge offers an opportunity for accelerated economic growth if the country makes the needed investment in human capital. Failure to do so will have far-reaching economic and social consequences. But more on this in a minute. Let me turn now to poverty. The scale of poverty is also alarming. It has risen to 44%, according to the World Bank. With anemic economic growth, cost of living crisis, and limited job creation, poverty has not only increased, but has become more severe, more intense. People living in extreme poverty has risen to 16.5% of the population. That's huge, from 4.9%. Those living in poverty obviously cannot provide education, health, and skills to their children and to the young. If we turn to health, the indicators are equally disturbing. Expenditure on health remains abysmally low. Health outcomes are, in fact, some of the worst in South Asia. And a disturbing phenomenon and consequence of malnutrition is child stunting. I'm sure you heard of this earlier in the day as well. The Human Capital Review, again, the same report I referred to earlier, calls this a public health crisis. And its report finds that 40% of Pakistan's children under 5 are stunted. This is a shocking number. It's actually a national scandal. And this condemns these children to a life of physical disability, poverty, and deprivation, and exposes them to premature mortality. It affects their future productivity and their earning capacity. Stunting obviously results from malnutrition, which is mainly associated with poverty. Now, progress in gender empowerment has also stalled. We know the gender gaps in education, in health, access to employment, financial services, information, political, and other opportunities continue to be very wide in our country. Pakistan, in fact, has plunged to the bottom in the World Economic Forum's Global Gender Gap Index of 2025. And we are ranked last among 148 countries. Gender inequality remains a major barrier to human capital development. Female participation in the labor force remains low at around 22% compared to over 80% for males. This is amongst the lowest in the world. It's amongst the lowest in the Muslim world, and well below rates for countries at comparable income levels. Now, it's a well-established fact that more women in the workforce helps economies grow and increases GDP per capita. Gender empowerment is not just a desirable social goal, it is a strategic imperative. It is an imperative for economic growth and for the country's future prosperity. Turning now again to how the youth bulge in our population is playing out in the midst of this human development crisis. Due to the unavailability of educational resources, only 10% of young people make it to college or university. This is a fact that I picked up from Mehtab Saab's vlog. So I stand by this figure because it is obviously absolutely reliable. So if around 3 to 4 million young people are entering the job market every year, but many have no education or skills to be employed, what kind of a future are they going to have? And those who do have some education are unable to find jobs because there simply aren't enough jobs being created to absorb these new entrants. The consequence is that 37% of our youth, aged between 15 to 24 years, are unemployed, and in fact not participating in education or training of any kind. It is estimated that at the present rate of population growth, by 2040, Pakistan will need over 100 million new jobs and thousands of new schools and hundreds of universities or colleges. Now, if we look at the relationship between population growth and the dismal state of human development, it is apparent that Pakistan's exponentially rising numbers are outstripping our resources. Population growth at about 2.2, 2.5% annually means around 5 to 6 million children are added to the population every year. We simply don't have the resources to provide education, health, and healthcare and a decent standard of living to this rising population. In every area, the demands of a growing population are exceeding what is available. Stagnant or low economic growth is insufficient to accommodate this rising population. So we're really caught in a classic vicious cycle. The increase in population is putting enormous pressure on the country's scarce resources, its physical infrastructure, labor markets, and across all public systems, including health and education, at a time when as I said before, the economy is simply not growing. And even when the economy does grow, rapid population growth obviously erodes per capita gains and leaves people mired in low-income cycles. An overarching factor that is deepening the crisis in human development is lack of population planning policies. This is but obvious. Governments pay little or no attention to what this alarming situation means for the future of the country. And Pakistan's regional peers have almost all successfully implemented family planning policies, but our country, sadly, has failed to do so. And yet Pakistan was one of the earliest countries to have had a population policy, and an effective one. But for decades thereafter, there has been no seriousness on the part of successive governments or any priority given by them to the issue of population control. There have been no sustained efforts and, no effective policies to deal with this issue. Worse, the subject has really been a ping-pong between the federal government and the provinces. Unfortunately, demographic issues have never grabbed the attention of politicians, planners, economists, and the media. There is no legislation, as far as I know, on family planning. Parliament has shown little or no interest in such a consequential issue. And this is in contrast to the experience in many other developing countries which have reached a consensus on population planning through parliamentary and public debate. It took a suo motu action and directive by the Supreme Court for a national task force on population to be established in 2018, charged with making recommendations for population control. The country's apex court considered family planning, and this is important. They considered family planning as a human rights issue and saw the need to do something in this area in view of this unchecked population growth straining public resources such as water, energy, and adversely affecting air quality. The task force initially made some recommendations, but they were very poorly or partially or non-seriously implemented. Headed by the president, it has, however, been virtually non-functional for many years. For it to be effective, the Prime Minister, I think, should head it. That's if he's interested at all and can take time off his foreign visits. Unless Pakistan implements a comprehensive population planning policy, whose elements I think are very well known, we don't need to spell them out, I think a doomsday scenario of a demographic disaster awaits the country, no less than that. An uneducated and underemployed population boom without matching opportunity is a recipe for social and political instability and can fuel unrest that can destabilize the country. And despite all these, grave consequences, we still have really no attention. There's no public debate. There's nothing happening in Parliament. I think my own view is that female members of Parliament have a special responsibility in this area. They should adopt this and drive this in our National Assembly and in our Senate. So I end by saying that I think Dawn has done a great national service by convening this conference, and I hope what emerges from this conference in terms of recommendations, and I'm no expert. I actually am an expert in other areas, but I was persuaded to speak on this because the whole issue of human development is very close to my heart, because that's the only meaningful development that should matter to any country. The rest of it, GDP and all of that, I mean, it has really no meaning to people, because those are mere statistics. I mean, of course, they're important. I don't want to minimize the importance of that. But what counts is human security. What counts is human welfare. What counts is what it means. Development means to people, to men, women, and children. So with that, I'm glad that all of you found the time to come this afternoon. It shows that this issue really is important to many people in our country. And I think, in a way, it falls on us to make this voice heard even more, so that the government sits up and takes notice and stops amending the Constitution every 6 months to grab power and to subvert and subordinate our judiciary. I think these are the issues that should count for them, and not issues of grabbing power. Because if you grab power, what are you grabbing power for? What are you going to do with this? You can grab as much power as you want, but it has no meaning. It has no meaning for the people of Pakistan. So with that, thank you so much for listening.
Thank you, Dr. Maliha Lodhi. With this, we conclude our session 6 and we proceed towards our last session of the day. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Session 7. We will now be moving forward to session 7, titled A Heightened Responsibility to Restore the Balance Between Center and the Province. This session addresses